Hello and welcome to our Vaping, Tobacco, Cannabis, and Teens webinar for parents and other caring adults. Whether you are joining us live or watching the recording, we really appreciate you joining us. My name is Emily Justice, and I am the manager of the Tobacco Use Prevention Education Program at the Contra Costa County Office of Education. Joining me tonight are Jillian and Naisa, Contra Costa students and members of the Courage Youth Health Coalition, as well as my colleagues Derek Kirk and Evelyn Marin, Youth Development Specialists. I am excited to be here with you all this evening. We know your time is valuable and we appreciate you spending some of it with us. We would like to acknowledge that we are holding and recording this webinar on the traditional lands of the Yokuts, Karkin, Confederated Villages of Lishan, Ohlone, Miwok, and Muwekma peoples. With respect to Indigenous practices, our use of the term tobacco throughout this presentation refers to commercial tobacco products, which has been mass-produced for profit. Unless stated otherwise, we are not referring to traditional or sacred tobacco used by Native American communities for spiritual or medicinal purposes. This distinction highlights the health risks of commercial tobacco, which is harmful and addictive.
Tobacco Use Prevention Education, or TUPE for short, is a program with the Student Programs Department at the Contra Costa County Office of Education. Our goal is to prevent and reduce tobacco use among young people, and this includes the most popular tobacco products on the market, e-cigarettes and vape pens. Our county office TUPE team provides technical assistance to school districts to develop and implement effective, comprehensive tobacco education programs. Our team works alongside school districts in our county, as well as provides direct service to students in county office programs. We partner with hundreds of adults and young people who are part of a larger TUPE network, including district administrators, site-level coordinators, curriculum instructors, intervention providers, community partners, hundreds of student peer educators, and Courage Youth Coalition members to implement TUPE programs across the county. Courage was established through a partnership between the Contra Costa County Office of Education and the Center for Human Development, and continues as a partnership between TUPE and Friday Night Live, both programs supported by our County Office of Education. Courage is a youth advocacy coalition comprised of 40 students, 8th through 12th graders, from all over Contra Costa County. Courage stands for C, our A, advocacy, G, generation, and E, education. Courage is a youth-centered and directed leadership and advocacy group working to address issues around prevention of youth tobacco, cannabis, prescription drug, and alcohol use. Courage members use their voices to educate and present local decision makers and at youth conferences and parent events like this webinar. They also lead an annual countywide media contest. I would like to quickly review a few logistics. You may have noticed that this presentation is being recorded. However, all attendees are muted and not on video. The webinar recording will be made available following the presentation, so you will have access to all of the information shared tonight. We ask that you please utilize the Q&A box to submit questions. We will monitor the Q&A box throughout the presentation, and also have time set aside after the presentation to respond to questions. We will provide key resource links via the chat box and at the end of the webinar. They will also be sent out to all attendees via email following the presentation. During this webinar, we will cover the latest tobacco products used by young people, including vaping devices and new nicotine pouches like Zyn. The impact of vaping, tobacco, and cannabis on young people, what we are doing to address these issues, and ways that adults can support young people in their lives.
So now I would like to invite you to think about this question. So at what age is the brain considered fully developed? Please reveal the answer. So the brain is typically considered fully developed around age 25, which some find surprising. Our brain is the control center of our body, driving our thoughts, feelings, and actions. While each part of the brain has its own function, they operate as one connected network. The brainstem is the first part of the brain to develop and is responsible for our survival functions. So these are things like regulating our breathing, our heart rate, and our balance. The limbic system is responsible for our behavioral and emotional responses, including our flight or fight response when faced with crisis. The cerebral cortex is the outer layer of the brain and allows the two halves of our brain to the hemispheres to communicate. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for our executive functioning, things like higher level cognitive functioning, like complex planning, decision making, self-regulation. And this is the part of the brain that is going through the most rapid period of development during adolescence. So let's just take a moment to talk a little bit about the adolescent brain. So the teenage brain is a work in progress, and that is a great thing. Adolescence or the teenage years is a great time to learn new skills and hobbies and interests, because learning those things as the brain is still developing means that those behaviors, those interests, those skills can be more cemented in the brain for the rest of someone's life. However, risky behaviors, things like using tobacco and other drugs, can also more strongly impact the adolescent brain due to that rapid period of development. The part of the brain responsible for decision making and impulse control is still in development during the teen years. Because young people's brains are still developing, they can become addicted to substances more easily than adults. So in summary, adolescence is a time of opportunity where parents and other caring adults can co-create environments that leverage where young people are in their brain development. So we can help provide spaces where young people are able to explore positive and healthy risk-taking behaviors, such as participating in new activities and building relationship with their peers and caring adults.
Right. So, young people in their molding minds. In that, got to ask a question. We kind of want to ground ourselves in a little bit of data as we're looking at Contra Costa County. So the question is, what percentage of Contra Costa County 11th graders report current vaping? So put in mind, I think somebody threw in the Q&A earlier, whoever got 25 on the button, good job. But just put in mind, what percentage do you think are using vaping products in Contra Costa County? Give you a couple more seconds. Oh, that's why I said 18%. I think I saw it. Okay, got some good guesses. Okay. All right. So in that, this data comes from our California Health Care Survey. We have about 40,000 students that were surveyed, and in this, it shows what the numbers are looking like. So if you said 18, a little too high, yay. We're actually happy that it's lower than what you guess. And that's what tends to happen when we do surveys. We always over project, but 8% of Contra Costa 11th graders report vaping. And the goal, of course, we want to keep that number coming down. And so according to the survey, that's those ones that has been a decrease from 11% to 16%. We had, for a while, there was a trend of vaping was going down in like 2017. Then new products came out, it kicked it back up, and now it's coming back down. So we're celebrating it in our office because it shows that young people aren't using. So while we're seeing increases steadily in the rates, we know it still represents too many young people that are using, that are out there struggling with tobacco use. And so in that, we just want to really highlight that to remind you the majority of our young people aren't vaping. Sometimes we see that number, the 8%, we see the thousands, the majority aren't. So that's out of those 40,000, 2,273. So that's a small number. Of course, we want to have that decrease, but I don't want people walking away like, it's bad out of Contra Costa. No, it's a small minority of young people. And we want to reach them and give them proper information. So in that, we just want to break down what it looks like across the nation, nationally. E-cigarettes and vaping are still the number one and the most popular way that young people are using tobacco products in high school and middle school. And what we're seeing in the last couple of years, which we'll touch on shortly, are the rise of nicotine pouches. Yeah, I know some of the stuff you like. Again, something new. Yeah, these nicotine pouches have been kicking up. They were sixth back in the day, like 2 years ago, a year ago. They were ranked fourth after in 2023 after e-cigarettes and cigarettes. In 2024, though, nicotine pouches jumped to being second most popular. So just keep that in mind that as we're still giving information and teaching our young people, tobacco company, big tobacco, they're dastardly. I use that with all sense of the word. They're always trying to find another way to get addicting products into the next generation. Okay, so I'm gonna pass it back over to Evelyn.
All right, thank you for that. I'd like to open an opportunity and invite our youth from Courage to answer a question. Jillian and Nisa, from your perspective, how has tobacco use, including vaping, changed over your middle and high school experience?
For me, at least, I think that, especially in middle school, in sixth grade, there weren't too many kids vaping. There were a couple more kids as I got older into seventh and eighth grade, but still not too many. Now that I've gotten to high school, I feel like every time I go into one of the school bathrooms, there's always someone vaping. Or if there's not someone vaping, it always smells like someone has been recently. So even if there's not someone currently, the smell still remains. It's not fun. All I'm trying to do is just do my business. Like it's annoying, at least at the very least.
Mhm.
And honestly, like I feel that people don't realize the harm that it's doing for them. And it's something that even if we tell them, they don't want to believe the negative impacts. But it's definitely more popular as people get from middle school into high school.
Yeah, I completely agree. One thing I've also noticed about like tobacco usage as compared to middle school and high school is that it in high school it's increased a lot more public settings. In middle school, people would kind of hide the fact that they use certain products, like in bathrooms and corners and things like that. But now I see all the time at like any high school gathering with like tons of high schoolers, like you'll see people using certain products. And it just like makes like me wonder like, oh, when has this become so normalized? It's gotten to the point where people don't even judge you or like point out that like there's anything wrong with what you're doing, which is so crazy because obviously it's not legal for high schoolers. So like when did it suddenly become such a like a normal thing in like society for like all high schoolers. And I've also noticed that products do spread more quickly in high school than in middle school. It'll like as in they've become more easily accessible, meaning if someone wants it, you can probably just get it just by asking around. While in middle school, it was kind of more, oh, you had to like go out of your way if someone wanted to get something. So I think the fact that it's more easily accessible kind of like enforces like more people to do it in high school. So yeah.
Thank you, Jillian and Nisa, from sharing some of your experience in middle school and high school. It's important for us to all hear you out and understand what you're going through. And I would like to move forward with a quick quiz for you all. This is one of my favorite parts. Please identify how many vaping-related items are in this photo. And I will give you a few moments. You can count to yourself. All right. Hopefully you were able to count how many vaping products you believe are in the photo, I will reveal the number. There are 7 related vaping items in this photo. Numbers 1 and 2 are examples of vaping devices that contain THC, the psychoactive compound in cannabis or marijuana. Numbers 3 and 6 are examples of 2 devices from the same company, Soren Drop, which looks like a small highlighter pen, and Soren Air. Both are refillable devices typically used for nicotine. Number 4 is an e-liquid, which is the liquid containing flavors and either nicotine or THC that is added to refillable devices. Lastly, number 7, shown being charged in the computer, is Juul. While no longer as popular among young people, Juul paved the way for a new generation of pod-based systems, like number 5, Puff Bar, that contain very high concentrations of nicotine. E-cigarette or vape devices come in many different shapes and sizes, although they have these basic components in common. All e-cigarette products heat up, although not to the point of combustion like cigarettes or cigars. The battery is the energy source, which powers a coil called an atomizer, which then heats up the e-liquid that is in a cartridge that is on the inside or outside of the devices. E-liquid is the flavored liquid that is used in e-cigarettes, sometimes referred to as e-juice, juice, or vape juice. E-liquid is available in a range of nicotine strengths and flavors. These devices can create aerosol, not vapor. Aerosol is more discreet than cigarette smoke. It dissipates more quickly and may have a sweet smell based on the flavor. These products have changed over time. E-cigarettes, or cigalikes, first entered the market in 2007. These products mimicked the size and shape of a combustible cigarette, and the nicotine solution is sold in pre-filled cartridges. Vape pens are larger than e-cigalikes and often have the appearance of an ink pen. These devices reach higher temperatures, can have batteries that may be rechargeable, and have a refillable cartridge that the user fills with a nicotine or THC e-juice. Mods, or tanks, are the largest devices. They have a more powerful battery that then creates more aerosol, and the user inhales more nicotine and chemicals more quickly. The devices have a refillable tank for a nicotine solution. Pod-based systems are typically smaller and look like a USB. Pods consist of 2 parts, a battery and a pod filled with a nicotine solution that connects to it. The pods can be refillable or purchased pre-filled.
All right, so let's talk pod systems, folks. About to get wild and crazy, so strap in. Pod-based systems are by far they're the most popular ones that we're seeing young people use. They've kind of molded over the years, and we kind of created a whole new category because of the infamous Juul company. So the first form of pods were closed pod systems. This is where basically you had the device that was associated with the company, and then you had pods that fit it. So they weren't interchangeable. My blue pods fit my blue, Juul fit Juul. You couldn't switch them out. Those were when you're done, the pod was empty, you would throw it away and get a new one, right? Get a new pack. And then you have open systems, which are similar to like e-cigs, where the pods came out, but you would fill the pods up with your own e-liquid. Most of them having a chemical called nicotine salt, which is a concentrated form of nicotine, very potent. That's actually what Juul stumbled across, and other companies followed suit because of the potency of it, as well as the addictiveness. So you have open systems, which are still around, but not many people are using them as often. Now, what we're seeing more often that are coming across our desks are what you call disposables. These are ones where they come pre-filled with a certain amount of liquid, and when it's done, you get rid of it. They're not supposed to be rechargeable, but the ones we've been getting the last couple of years, they actually got USB ports in them at the bottom or the top, where you have to recharge them because there's so much liquid in them that the battery that comes with it is not even powerful enough to let them harness the inhaling of the aerosol that's coming in. So disposables are what we're seeing more often. And even though the name sounds good, they're actually toxic because the battery and all the chemicals, those can't go into the regular trash bin. So this is where we're seeing an uptick on an environmental scale. So when we're looking at pod systems or disposables, here's some of the ones that have come across our desks. Me and Evelyn go throughout the county. We talk to principals and VPs when they catch students vaping. Sometimes they give us the products that have been confiscated. All the ones on the screen right now, we have at our desk at some point, and we have to update quite often. And as you can see, most of them are pretty cheap. Most of them are under $20. And the prices are scary because a pack of cigarettes on average is about $8 to $10, 8 or 9. These things are under 20, and some of them have way more nicotine than just 1 or 2 packs. So this is where we're seeing an uptick in usage as well as addictive natures from our young people. So one of the most infamous ones out there is the Elf Bar. Yeah, I know the name doesn't sound bad, but it is. It's all throughout the county. We go from far east county to west to south central, everywhere. Elf Bar is one of the top brands that are out there. It's discreet. You can actually fit your hand around it. It's one of those disposables that's pre-filled. And you can charge the battery. As I said, you have those health risks you're dealing with. The companies have gotten into all kind of trouble. And the scary thing is most of them are not even approved by FDA to be on the market. But as we see, young people have their hands on them and they're very popular, especially with the flavors and such. So as I said, we got to upgrade often because it's a moving target and young people have new devices that are offered them and it changes with the blow of the wind. And speaking of blow of the wind, now we got a new wind blowing in. You have the smart e-cigs that are coming out. Now, we got wind of this probably around the summertime. And, I'm a little troll online. I'll be on YouTube watching people doing tutorials and reviews. I like to see what's out there. And there's a bunch of stuff out there. Hopefully it never shows up in the county. But sadly, I have had discussions where young people are saying they're seeing these. They have family members and friends using them. So this trend is where you have these techie Bluetooth devices to where not only they have screens with apps, some of them have speakers, they have alarms, you can answer your phone. Some of the worst ones actually have a video game on the front where you can turn it sideways, has buttons where you can play Pac-Man and Tetris for us 80 babies out there. So, but they're targeting our young people, so they're making it very attractive, alluring to them. And so in this, it could look like a device that might just be a new gadget, but they're actually vaping products, and many of them are still cheap. You can play your music on them. They're $20. Like, they're making it affordable for our young people to use. And I go back to the same thing, even though they're quote unquote disposable, they still have all those chemicals in them, all those batteries, all those components that you're not supposed to just discard. And love our young people, but they're not saying, oh, I got my vaping device, let me go to a proper disposal site. They're tossing them wherever they are. You can find them sometimes on the ground, and other times you can find them just anywhere laying out. Sadly, some of the other things we're finding when they are used in the bathroom and to avoid being caught, some of them go as far as to flush them down the toilet because it's inexpensive and they don't want to get caught with the device. So in that question, true or false, are all tobacco products contain the same amount of nicotine? You can ask yourself that. Pretty sure most of you already know the answer because, this is a little rhetorical for you. Answer is false. No, they all do not contain the same amount of nicotine, especially as they've gone along and they've added more potency over the years. And how does this translate? An average smoker who smokes cigarettes smokes 1 pack a day. There's 20 cigarettes in a pack. You will not find a pack of cigarettes with less than 20 cigarettes. That equates to 22 milligrams of nicotine. So like I said, the average smoker smokes 20 cigarettes a day. When it came to Juul, when they came out, they came up with that concoction of nicotine salt, very potent. That little Juul pod is only 0.7 milliliters of liquid, but it contains as much as 37 cigarettes worth of nicotine. This was alarming to us when we found out because, as I said, the cost effectiveness, right? 1 Juul pod is about $4. Average price of cigarettes is about 8 to 10. So you're getting about twice as much nicotine for half the price. And so that was when Juul was like holding up the crown. They were running with it, and then all the lawsuits came out. But other companies said, hey, we need to do what they're doing. And then Flume kicked in around 2021 when we started coming back from pandemic. Disposable, the Puff Bar came first, and Flume was after it. Flume was larger. It has 8 milliliters of liquid. It has about 3,000 puffs preloaded. Costs about $25 on average, and 5% nic salt. And when we were seeing this show up at schools, we're like, how much nicotine is that? So Stanford, they do research on tobacco. And so we emailed them like, hey, Stanford, we're finding a bunch of our students in Contra Costa County using Flume. Can you tell me how much one Flume has in it worth of nicotine? They ran the numbers and said because it has 8 milliliters with 5% nic salt, it's equivalent to 363 cigarettes worth of nicotine. I know, you can clutch your pearls right now, folks. It's a little scary. And talking to young people, some of them can go through a Flume in a week. You got to imagine when you're smoking cigarettes, chain smoke, you got to light it, smoke it down, light another one. You can only go through so many. With these vaping devices, you can hit it as common as walking to school, coming home, doing homework, eating breakfast, playing video games. They can take hits at all times. So in this, you can get a lot of nicotine in your body very rapidly. So because of that large number, we're seeing young people who are exhibiting high levels of addiction because this nicotine is kicking in. And then good old Elf Bar, which is kind of taking over. Elf Bar is a little bit more than Flume. I think they're hovering around 13 milliliters of liquid. One Elf Bar is equivalent to 590 cigarettes worth of nicotine. That's almost a month's worth. It's almost 30 packs. So for the price of 2 packs of cigarettes, you're getting 30 days worth of nicotine, 30 packs worth. That's insane. And we have to continue to do this education for our young people because they just see flavors, they see vaping, they see water. It sounds nice. So we have to constantly give them updated information because it changes so often. And so now, I know, you thought we were done. You said, oh, okay, we went through the worst part of the storm. No, this is new. So for us, people who were born in the 19s, yes, a kid told me that. He said I was born in the 19s. I got so offended. For those who were born prior to 2000, you may be familiar with chew or snuff. Those are traditional forms of chew tobacco where you would take a pinch of it, put it in your mouth, chew it around, your mouth absorbs the nicotine, walk around the bottle, spit it out. Of course, it's kind of associated with chew tobacco and baseball. Over time, they kind of modified it to where they had snus, which is where they took that tobacco and they put it in a little pouch, and that pouch will go in your mouth. And instead of having to spit out the goo, you can swallow the concoction of saliva and mixture, which still wasn't good, but you didn't have to have the brown stuff all over your teeth. And then now the newest generation, we have these nicotine pouches. So what they are finely ground, they're finely refined pouches with nicotine powder in them. So whereas the snus was tobacco, the snuff was tobacco bits, snus was finely ground tobacco, nicotine pouches is a concentrated powder. So it's not physical tobacco in there. It is nicotine that's derived from it. And you have this combined with flavorings, sweeteners, other fillers, preservatives, and then PHE for the baking powder that goes into it. They're classified as a tobacco product because they have nicotine, but this is highly potent nicotine that goes in, and they keep it between their gum and their lip. And most of the times they put it in their upper lip. They call it upper decky. And so in this, you're getting jolts of nicotine into your system. And so we are seeing these as an uptick in our county. They've been out for a while, but now we're starting to see more usage. As I said, they have nicotine powder. You don't have to spit them out. They have flavors upon flavors. So this is another draw from young people. One of the most popular brands that when I talk to students across the county, Zen is the one that pops out more often. And they have like code words, a little slang. They say, I'm going to Zimbabwe. That might be a way for them to transfer it, or they're Zenfluencers. So just kind of keep an ear out. The packages look similar to like Orbit's gum. And so in this, they're discreet. As I said, they had the flavors, Zen, OWN, Velo, Rogue. Those are the most popular. Swisher Sweets make their own version of it. The scary thing is on the top of it, as you can, I don't know if you can see for the image, it says tobacco free. And so in that, it gives the impression that it's not a bad product. It says tobacco free because there's no physical tobacco in there, but you have nicotine that comes from it, which makes it addictive. And so the leaf is not in there, but the thing that keeps people coming back, that is the main component of what it is. And then, of course, they play upon the health, and this is better for you, the health halo. It's all like a marketing tactic that they do, and people overestimate and they minimize the health effects. And this is why these products are going out there, natural, low calorie. Like, it sounds good. They got the buzzwords, and come on, look at the name Zen. Let's be calm here. Like, they're trying to associate with other things, and this is why we're seeing young people use, because they're being misinformed and played upon. So in this is a newer thing that we're seeing. And when it comes to the nicotine pouches, very potent. As I said, one Zen pouch is equivalent to about 3 cigarettes worth of nicotine. That's 1 milligram. One pouch has 6 milligrams of nicotine, and it can deliver it for up to hours. And like I said, it's up to 3 cigarettes. Very potent, as I said. And inside the Zen tin, the can that it comes in, it has about 15 pouches per tin. So that's roughly about 45 cigarettes. So you're looking at about 2 packs, right? 2 packs of nicotine worth of cigarettes, 2 packs of cigarettes worth of nicotine in these tins, and they're roughly about $5. So you do the math. They're getting more nicotine, even though they said it's healthy, it's better, for cheaper price. They're making the addiction cheaper for our young people, this generation. Told you, we're dealing with a company that's has $1 billion industry and machine behind it, and trying to catch it is what we kind of continue to do at each corner. So just key takeaways when we talk about the nicotine pouches: it's not physical tobacco in there. There's powder. It's held between your lip and your gum. They call them tobacco-free nicotine. No, it still comes from tobacco, is derived from that. Nicotine's what brings them back, and a young developing brain, as Emily was talking about, is very impressionable, as well as it can be woven into their system of saying, I need this as much as water, food, and sleep. None of them are approved to be cessation devices. They have not been proven to help you quit, along with all vaping products. You have nicotine gum that's been proven. You have nicotine pouches. They say that this is a way to help people get off of tobacco, but none of them have been proven. So when people say, oh, it's helping save lives and yada, 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 for every life that's saved, how many young people are being addicted? That's what we're looking at. And it is classified as a tobacco product in California. And like I said, ultimately, you can still have some dangers that take place in your mouth. It can irritate the gums, just like other products. And even though you're not impacting your lungs, your mouth does get impacted by these products. So keep an eye out for them. As I said, we're starting to see more prevalence hop out throughout the county. Talk to young people. I guarantee they'll tell you a little bit more than we know. Yeah, so I'm going to pass it off now.
And we're going to talk to young people again. So Nisa and Jillian, I know that you are in different grade levels and you're in different parts of our county. So I would love to hear from your perspective on what are you seeing being used by young people, and what do you how is this impacting you and your peers? So Nisa, how about you go first?
Yeah, so most commonly, I for sure see elf bars and geek bars. And like Derek said, the screens with the music being able to be played by them makes it very appealable to young people. It could actually make them mistaken as toys. Like I've seen one before, and it's hard to tell that it's even a vape product. So I think that's really crazy for especially like when people use them in school, because I feel like many teachers can get fooled thinking that it's just a little game or a little toy. Um, and also along with that, this year I've also recently been seeing a lot of just plain cigarette use in high schools. So that too.
At my school, at least, I see a lot of people using the different Flume products. Some of them are like the Flume float that you saw a picture of earlier. Others are still the Flume product, but they have a more similar look to an Elf bar. The other main products that I'm seeing are ones that have like cannabis or THC in them, and the smell of those is definitely worse because like people think, oh, it smells fine and it still tastes good, when really like it does not smell good at all.
Thank you both so much. And this just reiterates for me about how we need to be in conversation with young people about these issues, because this issue looks very different. Tobacco use looks very different than when I was a young person. And so Nisa and Jillian, thank you so much for being with us tonight and sharing your expertise. So just to talk a little bit about some of the health effects. So I think I'm going to assume that many people are familiar with some of the known health risks associated with especially smoking tobacco. So the most common one that we often think about is the impact on lung health. So smoking damages lung tissue. It leads to diseases like emphysema, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, and lung cancer. It destroys the alveoli, which are those tiny air sacs in our lungs that are really, really important for exchanging oxygen in our body. And smoking reduces the ability of those air sacs to do their job. The particles inhaled while vaping can also cause inflammation and irritation in the lungs, leading to conditions like bronchitis. And long-term vaping, because we now have data on that since vaping has been around now for many years, it can lead to chronic lung conditions, including small airway obstruction, as well as asthma-like symptoms. And then the impact on the heart. So tobacco use is a major cause of cardiovascular disease, including coronary heart disease. It increases plaque buildup in arteries, raises blood pressure, and it makes blood more likely to clot. So, and that can lead to heart attacks and strokes. And then smoking and vaping can also cause ear, nose, and throat damage. So irritating and inflaming the small passageways that connect the middle ear to the back of the throat, as well as our nasal passages and our throat. And this is common for both first-hand users of smoking and vaping, but also those who are experiencing second-hand exposure to smoke or aerosol. And this exposure can cause chronic ear infections, sinusitis, throat conditions like chronic laryngitis, and it also increases the risk of cancer in these areas. And then lastly, which we've been mentioning throughout, nicotine in tobacco is highly addictive. It alters brain chemistry and can lead to dependence. It affects brain regions involved in reward and stress, making quitting difficult. And long-term use can lead to cognitive decline and increased risk of stroke. So with that said, we want to switch gears just a little bit and address some of the intersections between tobacco and cannabis or marijuana use. So I want you to think to yourself, what percentage of Contra Costa County 11th graders do you think report using cannabis or marijuana in the last month? So that's what we consider current use. So just take a moment to think to yourself what you think that rate is. So according to the California Healthy Kids Survey data from 2021 to 2023, over 40,000 students surveyed, 11% or just over 1 out of 10 Contra Costa 11th graders reported current marijuana use. So I'll note that this is slightly more than or slightly higher percentage than those that report current vaping. But like tobacco use, fortunately, we are seeing declines in use. So that's the good news. Unfortunately, we're still seeing far too many young people struggling with use. So like tobacco use, we want to reiterate that most young people are not currently using marijuana or cannabis. And we use those terms interchangeably.
All right, so now it's time to get into the weeds. See what I did there, folks? Okay. There's common ways that people use tobacco, or sorry, not tobacco, cannabis. The most traditional way that was used for hundreds of years probably was smoking it. They have, as you can see on the left, there's a blunt, which is where you take cannabis and roll it inside a little cigar called a cigarillo, and that's where you have a blunt output. You have a joint where it's cannabis rolled in paper. You have bongs, you have pipes. Those is where you heat it up directly and you inhale from a mouthpiece. And then you also have the vaping versions where you have the cartridge that you would get from a dispensary. Some of them are very popular brands like Stizzy, They fit Stizzy devices, and then the cartridges like the Gorilla Glue from the Mario Kart, those are a little bit more universal. You have a universal battery, and then they even have devices where you actually put the physical bud in there and it gets aerosolized. So this is where it's releasing that aerosol, as Evelyn was saying, without it being burned. And so you're still getting high degrees of cannabis oil into your lungs. And then edibles can be just about anything. Weed is highly soluble. It melts easily in butter. And once you turn something to butter, you can make whatever. You got candy, breakfast cereals, beef jerky. They take Pop-Tarts. They make Rice Krispie treats, lollipops, anything. Cannabis can also be drinks. You can infuse it and brew it. Now, the problem with when it comes to edibles, it hits your body different. Inhaling cannabis, whether it's smoking it or using a vaporizer, you feel the effects within minutes. But when it comes to edibles, your body has to digest it for the THC to get released. And that's when you tend to find more issues of young people or people in general showing up in the hospital because they ate whatever they consumed and all the THC came out at the same time. And sometimes it's more than your body can handle. That might kick them into overdose mode. Typically, it takes about 30 minutes, but some people's digestive system can be 40, 50, an hour. And then sometimes the high can last in your system for hours on end. So this is where that delayed effect sometimes causes people to accidentally go into consuming more than they can handle. And so in that, we're seeing a rise of vaping cannabis. The difficulty with this is you have the same effects as smoking cannabis, but it doesn't smell. Many times they have flavors, and whatever flavor is in there, that's what you will smell when they're inhaling it. Also, there's high levels of concentration of THC, very high levels. And the ones on the right are actually disposables. So disposables were, for the first couple of years when they came out with the pod systems, were more assigned to just e-cigs and using e-liquids. Now you can have disposable versions of THC wax pens, and this is where you're getting high levels in that as well. And just a quick breakdown for those who haven't been up on this, cannabis has been used for years. If you've been back in the 60s, hippies used to use cannabis. What percentage of THC was in the weed that they were smoking? 1 to 2%, folks. Did it work? Yes, they got high. Might have smoked some weed, played some songs, kicked some daffodils, spun in a circle, watched Scooby-Doo, right? They weren't sitting down for hours, but it worked. And then over time, they started cross-pollinating, add other chemicals. So now today, if you bought cannabis from your average street level dealer, you're hovering around 20 to 25% THC. And that's the physical bud. So when you buy the flower and you smoke it, it doesn't get much higher than that because you can't pull out that much THC of it. But when you're dealing with concentrated forms of wax and edibles, they're a lot more potent, harder to quit. And also they can trigger psychotic disorders and other forms of anxiety and depression. So whereas some people might be using to calm down or pain relief, these high levels of THC is having a different effect. So they may have severe side effects outside of what they normally experience from cannabis. And so when it comes to the vape version of them, cartridges for the most part start out at 40% THC. So I want you to just keep that in mind. It's almost a different drug. And so the Stizzy that we see right now, that one has 86.5% THC. Way different, vastly different. I mean, a student, a young person could take a couple hits, they're feeling the high off of those couple hits. The fire on the side is 90.3. I just want you to be aware, this is the form of some of them using on a regular. Imagine what tolerance levels look like, all of that. And then the fireman, you're looking at 91% THC. So this is where it's alarming to us because we're seeing the adverse effects on a young person's lives who are using. So the health effects that are taking place in the body, as with what Emily highlighted earlier, parts of the body are affected due to use of cannabis. Of course, when you're looking at cannabis on your lungs, a lot of damage to chemicals in there. People don't realize that cannabis actually has tar. So the same things that happen in lungs when you smoke cigarettes, the lungs turn black, they look all yellow and ugly and brown. You have tar also in cannabis. High levels of that is released when you're using it. So in this is causing damage. You can also get secondhand that you're inhaling from cannabis. When you're also using, your heart gets impacted, of course. Anytime you apply heat to your chest, inhaling that, you have the substances from the plant that come in, they have caused extra damage. And then also when you're dealing with a developing brain, there's strong evidence to show the negative impacts on the brain for young people because they're still developing up to the age 25. So be mindful that even though it's legal, it's normalized on a young developing brain, it can actually cause dangerous things that we're seeing over time. And so just a few warning signs when you're dealing with somebody who's potentially using tobacco or cannabis or vaping. Just kind of look for their behaviors. If there's a change in behaviors, increase in secrecy, they need to go to the bathroom, their social groups change. I know sometimes you be following your kids on Instagram. If you notice there's a couple unsightlies around, you might want to say, hey, who's that and what y'all doing? So keep that in mind. Physically, the signs are persistent cough because it's that lungs are getting damaged and impacted. Nanoparticles of metal are coming off that coil getting into your lungs. So look for persistent coughs, increased thirst, nosebleeds, mouth sores. Dentists can sometimes tell when people are vaping because they hold the device in the same spot and the residue hits there. And then environmental signs, unusual odors like sweet smelling. I mean, you can't chisel it down, say, oh, you smell like guava, you're vaping. No, it might be Bath and Body Works. You can't control that, but you can still have just do some snooping and ask some questions. So, and also look for things you haven't seen before, certain kind of chargers, small pods that might be discarded. Those are things that you can kind of be aware of and just recognize these signs so you can help address the tobacco and vaping use early and being connected to your young people.
Thank you, Derek. I would like to acknowledge how you mentioned Bath and Body Works, not to be confused with a sweet or other fruity smell. Big Tobacco is targeting our young people, as we saw earlier with the games, and also with the many different flavors, and kind of how Derek covered it in the THC increase. Big Tobacco, they are making some changes and they are targeting the youth of today. So that's the bad news. Young people continue to be targeted by the tobacco industry with products that contain alarming amounts of nicotine and also THC. The good news is that most young people are not currently using these products, and we have a lot of programs and resources in place to respond to this issue. All districts in our county are certified as tobacco-free, meaning they have a clear policy in place that prohibits the use of all tobacco products, including vaping devices with or without nicotine. This policy applies to all students, staff, and visitors. Our comprehensive tobacco use prevention education TUPE programs at middle schools and high schools across the county include classroom-based education, as well as intervention and cessation resources for young people already struggling with use. One of the best parts of TUPE is the hundreds of student peer educators who are working in partnership with adults to educate their school communities. As our Courage members shared earlier, they're seeing a lot of use within the bathrooms. We find it important to have the youth teach each other on this subject. Lastly, we know that adults need access to this information and resources, so we also provide information and resources for staff and families, like we are doing through this webinar.
I never found my mute button. It's always crazy. Sorry. So last question for our Courage members. Y'all have given us great intel. How can a parent or other caring adults best approach a young person who they suspect may be using tobacco and or cannabis? Can you give us some tips? Let's go with Jillian first.
All right, so if you think that your child may be vaping, something that you could do is really just show support. Show them that they have a safe place at home where they can kind of talk about what's going on rather than feeling like they need to hide it or turn to something like a drug so that they can deal with those feelings. A lot of kids start because of something like stress or anxiety. But if they have someone who they can talk to, like a trusted adult, especially someone at home, it can help a lot. Also, like, don't push them because, like, if you are like, "Are you vaping? Are you vaping?" They're not going to want to share it with you. They're going to feel like you're threatening them with stuff, and it's not really a positive experience for either of you, and it can just increase tensions between the two of you.
Excellent answer, and I like how you portrayed the adults by sounding nagging. Are you vaping? Are you vaping? I keep in my head. Nisa, what you got?
Yeah, I completely like agree with you. I think that for one thing, adults should talk to kids like privately about these things. And not more like in an accusing manner, but like in a caring or like concerned way, so they feel more safe than like trapped, and they'll be more willing to share this way. Also like after questioning like a kid, I feel like instead of being mad straight up, I think adults should try to educate them first a little on why they shouldn't be using these products before taking action. And I think they should do this because you never know like what someone's going through or like how they're gonna react, or like how great their addiction is. So I think it's important to like make accusations with caution and like understanding so that like like Jillian said, like you're not pushing someone right away.
Excellent answers. Thank you. Hopefully we can take those and move those forward because from your perspective, it's a lot different than what adults know, and being sensitive to that is intentional. Good job. Okay.
So I want all of our attendees or those watching this webinar to know that we assume that you are already a caring adult because you've chosen to either join us live or watch the recording. But in addition to increasing your own knowledge about these topics, which is an important first step, we also encourage you to explore your own personal values and beliefs regarding tobacco, cannabis, other substance use. Our beliefs may shape our expectations that we have for the young people in our lives. Also, to support the young people in your life, we recommend that you talk early and often about this topic. And feel free to use this webinar as a kicking off point. So use it as a conversation starter. And I love this idea of like accuse with caution. And we would say, just open the door to the conversation and say like, hey, I just learned about some things I didn't know before. Like, what do you know about this topic? What are you seeing? And approach it really in as much of a non-judgmental way as possible. And then if you do suspect that a young person is struggling with tobacco and or cannabis use, it's important that we act quickly to address this issue and utilize the resources that are available to us. So we're going to share a little bit more about those resources so that you are leaving with some tools that you can utilize now or in the future if needed. So I want to direct you to one great resource, which is our parent guide on substance use and mental health. This guide is available in both English and Spanish, and it focuses on information and resources to protect and care for teens who may be facing substance use and mental health crisis. And you can either scan that QR code or use the link on the screen or in the chat to access this guide online. And then some additional resources that are available to you at no cost include our County Office of Education Tobacco Use Prevention Education webpage. So we update that regularly with information and resources. And we link often to some of our partners, including the Contra Costa Crisis Center, which is an incredible local resource. Kick It California, which their team has worked for decades to provide California young people and adults with the support and information they need to cut back or quit tobacco use. And then our go-to for information, for data and research is Stanford University's Tobacco Prevention Toolkit, and then the Cannabis Awareness and Prevention Toolkit.